The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and it must be Friday, and indeed it is. We're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park studios of Money Radio, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. Typically, I start our show by saying if you've never listened to the show before, our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. How do we do that? We do that by bringing extraordinary guests to the show. And today's no different. I have a great show lineup here on the last Friday of October. Hard to believe we're screaming into this fourth quarter. We got 2 months left of this year, and next thing you know, it'll be 2022. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guests. Here in the studio with me, I have the Alzheimer's Association Desert Southwest chapter. I've got Terri Spitz, who's the executive director for the Desert Southwest chapter. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Bob.
It's good to have you, and I've had you on before, and I've also had you on with your partner in crime here, Kinsey McManus. She's the program director for the Desert Southwest chapter. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here today.
Good to have you, and I've got just to my left, to Kinsey's right, I've got Michelle Cornelius. She is the Cypress Home Care Solutions Chief Operating Officer. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you. Beautiful day out. Glad to be here.
It is. We're still reeling off that big loss yesterday to the Green Bay Packers, James.
Gosh.
You know, if you could just see this guy's donning all this Green Bay Packer stuff. And
yeah, we don't want to hear that.
He knows how to rub it in.
Yeah.
He really does. But it wasn't a great game, but it was.
It's over.
It's over. Thank you. Thank you. And we're
just leave it at that.
And we're no longer undefeated.
We're moving on.
We are moving on. And speaking of moving on, our show is going to move on, and I want to really talk about the Alzheimer's Association, because this is the time of year that we really promote the work that the Alzheimer's Association is doing, and we're really drawing awareness to this god-awful disease. And the memory walk that is held every single year in Phoenix, usually that first week in November, is a week from tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So I want to really talk about that. And, Kinsey, being the program director, why don't you just share with our listeners this incredible walk? Where is it? How do consumers and listeners really learn about it?
Thanks. I'm actually going to pass that to Terri, who is our fearless leader when it comes to our walks, and I'll talk a little bit about where the funds from that walk go to support our incredible programming.
Oh, sure. Well, our walk is Saturday, November 6th, and just like you said, the first thing I want to say, it is going to be in person. And we are so happy about that. We are so excited to be back in community again. Last year we did a Walk is Everywhere, Walk in Your Neighborhood. We still, even though it was COVID, we went from the number 21 walk in the country for Phoenix to the number 13th walk in the country. So what that tells me is there are so many people in Arizona that need us. They're fighting to end this disease. This disease is not going away. It's not stopping, so we can't either.
Yeah.
So,
last year, Terri, I in the Walk Everywhere, I took my youngest son and one of his friends to Thunderbird Mountain Preserve, and we went hiking in our gear, and we had our flags, and we had everything with us, and we ran into other hikers that morning. It was such a great experience.
Other hikers
wearing their
purple.
gear, wearing their purple. I have pictures of strangers on the mountain, all walking everywhere, and having that experience where people are coming together in the community it was a much different feel than the in-person walks are, but it was still an amazing camaraderie.
Yep.
And you find that at every walk I've been to for the Alzheimer's Association. And I've done them in Denver, I've done them in San Francisco, I've done them here. It's quite an experience. You have a lot of folks come out.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I think you just throughout the country, the Alzheimer's walks, I think there's only been like a little over a dozen that have remained kind of walk in your neighborhood or walk, everywhere instead of having one event. But just to be clear, you can still do that. But we will have an in-person event at Wesley Bolin Plaza next Saturday. So it's either or, whatever everyone feels comfortable with. But this walk, and Bob, you know this because you've been involved with the walk in past years, and you've seen it grow from the memory walk and the very start. You're the one that kind of got us over that first hump, got it, really going. And
yes, we did.
And now with the Walk to End Alzheimer's, usually this walk has gotten up to 12,000 people. So we're actually expecting half of that, which is still a lot of people. We're going to, follow every protocol that we can. We've invested in, hand sanitizing stations. There's a lot of things that we're, making sure that, we're being especially safe for everybody that comes out. But what we're seeing, we're kind of in the middle of our walk season for Desert Southwest. So we've had a few already. We have our Las Vegas walk. We just had that one, Prescott. And we are seeing family members that, we had a gentleman in Prescott who lost his wife the night before to Alzheimer's.
Oh. Wow.
And he had been talking to our community executive, Leslie Jenkins, throughout this whole journey. And he came out with his friend who his wife also has dementia. And it was so therapeutic for them, and they felt like, there's this extended family with arms open, come with us. And the walk is just a big celebration. It's a big way to honor everyone who has had the disease, but then support and really show that you're not alone. Mm-hmm. And when you go to Phoenix, you go to that walk, you're not alone. That is one thing you leave with.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
I think the thing that impresses me most is the teams and the families that come together. And, they really rally together, and they usually, whether they have the names of their loved ones or pictures of their loved ones, it pulls at your heart. And it just says, wow, this has really affected them, but they've coalesced together, and they are here to help promote awareness and certainly help promote the funds that you guys are looking to raise. And I think, we may get into this segment, or maybe it's the next, is really what does the Alzheimer's Association do with those funds? Because you raise a lot of money. And you said about my connection to the Alzheimer's Association Memory Walk goes back to 2004 to 2007. And I helped to co-chair that, and to see the growth has been nothing short of phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about, where does the money go? And that's always a big question. I think every nonprofit, that's the first, does it stay here? What does that look like,
Right.
And, when we raise $50,000, I'll just tell you what $50,000 does. That, we get about 3,000 to 4,000 calls to Arizona from our 24/7 helpline. And that
is that a day or a week, a month, a year?
That's a year.
Okay,
that's
I just want to make sure we know that. That's a lot of calls.
For the national help, it's, a lot more than that. But the ones that come to Arizona, the ones that we take care, so that funds that effort. And if you are a caregiver, you're someone that's going through any stage of that disease, and you've called that helpline, that is often a lifeline to so many people, because this disease can progress very slowly, or it can be, something that happens quickly. And I know in my case, I have a family member that, things were okay until they wanted to exit a moving car. And then we thought, okay, there's some more going on here. So it's been a lifeline, and that's something that the walk helps with. So that's you should feel good about where you're donating.
you should definitely feel good. And, for me, who was involved in it back in 2004, I love the awareness piece. I love seeing that the Alzheimer's Association is running commercials. And not only are they running commercials, but, they have attached their cause to these famous actors and professionals that are out there acting as spokespeople. And I think that helps, especially people that can lend credibility to what the mission is really all about. So I got to tell you, I mean, it's come a long way. I want to talk a little bit more about the Alzheimer's Association and some of the great work you're doing. And I know they just released some World Alzheimer's Report data, and I want to share those. And unfortunately, I'm not here to say it's good, but I will tell you this. Information is power.
Yes.
And if we have information, we can do stuff about that. You've been listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I've got the Alzheimer's Association Desert Southwest chapter here. Terri Spitz, Kinsey McManus, and Michelle Cornelius with Cypress. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, we're here with the Alzheimer's Association. I have Terri Spitz, who's the executive director for the Desert Southwest chapter. I've got Kinsey McManus, she's the program director, and I've got Michelle Cornelius, who's our resident specialist in dementia and Alzheimer's with the Cypress Home Care Solutions Agency. She's our chief operating officer. If you missed our first segment, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button, third button down is radio show. You'll catch that first segment and many, many more. So when I left off on the first segment, I talked about the World Alzheimer's Report that just came out for 2021, and it came out with a lot of data and facts. And I said, it's not really good news. It's kind of bad, but knowledge is power, and really having data and data points and facts are really going to make us certainly draw an awareness to this and get all and every resource that we can against and really promote not just awareness but potentials for cures and potentials to delay onset. I mean, I think that's ultimately our goal. This is kind of, and it needs to be like the moonshot, right, in the 1960s. We have to do something because the data is just scary. I mean, they're talking, I remember reading this a while ago, and Kinsey, you might be able to update this. They're talking about by 2050, it's going to cost us over $1.5 trillion. That is just crazy, some of the data points. So I'll let you talk a little bit about that, and certainly talk about some of the resources here in Arizona. I think there's a lot of reasons why we are glad here that we live in Arizona, and the Cardinals. Yeah, they didn't perform, but the weather is great. But we also lead in areas that we really.
Yeah, we don't want to be this is an area we don't want to be number one, and we have the fastest growing rate of Alzheimer's disease in any other state in the country, and we want to be number one, but not in this. So
what do we attribute that to?
Well, part of it is the growing retirement community. So in the state plan on aging, I think it's by 2030, we're going to have more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 17. And just think about that. That's not too far down the line. And are we ready for it? And those are the things that these are the things that keep us up at night. And every day that we come in, we look at what can we improve, what can we do in our space as the Alzheimer's Association to improve this. And a lot of that is partnerships. It's really, building partners with our research centers. Even though that we're number one, we're also a place where there's a lot of hope. Banner Alzheimer's Institute, ASU, U of A, Mayo Clinic, Barrow. I mean, there's so many great research institutions here through the Arizona Research Consortium. And it's exciting, and that's something Alzheimer's Association does too. I mean, we fund a lot of that research, so we're all in it together. We feel like the answer could very well come out of the Desert Southwest area. So wouldn't that be cool?
Be very, we would be very
That'd be great.
hopeful.
Yeah.
You know, earlier this year, I had Dr. Eric Ryman here on the show,
Yeah.
and Eric is the founder of the Banner Alzheimer's Institute, and he's the chief medical officer for Banner. And you know, one of the things that his mission is to end Alzheimer's before we lose another generation.
Yep.
And you know, one of the things that he talks about, and I love this about our community, and I think it reaches beyond our community. It's the Alzheimer's community. Is a lot of researchers are very siloed. You know, they're very protective of the information, and they want to be the one to find the cure. That's not the case with dementia and Alzheimer's. It is open source. They are all sharing. I mean, you talk about USC, UCLA, Johns Hopkins. I mean, you know, Mayo Clinic. I mean, everybody is on this mission to try to help save so that we don't lose another generation.
Yeah. And that's where I feel very proud of our state and some of our leaders. And when you bring up Dr. Ryman, he's one of those. And it's, you know, the fact that we're removing barriers, we're removing those silos, because we recognize that it's not just a need, it's critical that everyone works together. It's critical that we work with our health systems. It's critical that we work with our community partners, and that we're spreading the word, and then we're sharing our resources, because there are areas that one organization may have where another organization doesn't. We can kind of supplement where there are gaps. So it's very important, and it's how we're going to go from number one and just move from that number one position, and how we're going to end Alzheimer's too.
Right.
And I love the consortium too, because the research isn't only focused on cure and prevention, but it's also what is the most effective help and assistance for both the person with dementia and their carers while we're waiting for this cure. And the conferences are great. They talk about what kind of music programs work best, what kind of equine programs. Really, the research is so holistic here in Arizona.
And it needs to be, because we also have in Arizona, we're winning another race we don't want to be winning.
Oh, Kinsey, bearer
I
of
know.
news here.
It's I hate to be the doom and gloom here, but the realities of our caregivers here in Arizona, they offer just shy of 39 hours a week of caregiving services. It is the highest number of hours per week by family member caregivers in the country.
This is unpaid care. This
Unpaid
is
care.
Caring for your spouse, your
Yes.
child, your parents.
Yes,
Depending
our
on where the
caregivers are
diagnosis is.
full-time caregivers, truly. And it's 50% higher than the average in the country. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, and part of it is because as a retirement state, many of our families have moved away from their social circles to retire in this great state of Arizona. And so it typically is one primary caregiver providing the care directly. But again, it's so critically important that our researchers are focused not only on the cure, but also on what our caregivers need in the here and now, and certainly the focus of what my work is at the association. You know, really thinking about what can we do to support our caregivers in this very difficult journey, the families, to ensure that we ease the burden as much as possible in these devastating diseases.
You know, and not enough is really talked about those caregivers. I mean, the fact that the person that is affected by this disease, you know, they are getting the resources, hopefully, to help them through their journey. But no one really can relate and understand what those family members are going through. The life partners, the children, all the relatives, the friends and neighbors. I mean, they're experiencing this loss, and certainly the vessel of that person's still there. Just
Absolutely.
the person themselves is not inside there, you know, and that's the hard thing that we need to grapple with, and we need to figure out how can we help these family members, because we have data points. And one of the data points that comes from AARP, it's a little bit old, but it still resonates true today, and that is that clients, we call them clients in home care, but couples caring for one another, if they are not getting outside help, 65 and older, 63% of the time the caregiver predeceases the care recipient because of the emotional and physical stress.
Yeah, and when we look at the cost of care, it's not just about the man hours or woman hours in providing the care. It's the cost to the health system as a whole, because not the person diagnosed, but you're talking about that care partner. What is the cost for their medical care? What is the cost for their emotional well-being?
Yeah, I think just through COVID, one of the things, I'm sure we're not the only ones. You know, so many people, so many companies had to move to Zoom and do those wonderful Zoom meetings.
Zoom and Doom.
And oh gosh, I'm so tired of those. But anyway, it kind of opened a door to what people are going through, and it gave kind of an inside look at you know, what people's lives are behind, you know, when they're from home and they've got young children, they're caregivers, and
it really did. You know, I was facilitating some of those Zoom support groups, and it's one thing to have a care partner in a room and being able to talk privately about what's going on, and it's something else to watch the person diagnosed behind them in the kitchen, going through things, not understanding why their person's on the computer, who they're talking to, getting paranoid about what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And you can really, when you, like we are at Cypress on a daily basis, when you're in the home, you can really see the overall effect and what a person goes through. And it's often very different than what they're sharing, which is where your groups come in great, and your social workers. I know we'll get to your support lines and talking about those programs too, because they do such great work helping somebody in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. How do I get through this?
So I do want to say we're at halftime, but I want to tee up our second segment because you said women caregivers, and you know, one of the things that I want our listeners to know that almost 2/3 of Alzheimer's our cases are women. It's halftime here at Health Future. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth. And it is the second half here on Friday here at Health Futures, and I am pleased to have the Alzheimer's Association Desert Southwest chapter here. I've got Terri Spitz, who's the executive director, and I've also got Kinsey McManus. She is the program director, and I got Michelle Cornelius, and she is with Cypress Home Care Solutions. She's our chief operating officer. And Terri, you are also on the Governor's Advisory Council on Aging, which something I served for 4 years, vice chair.
you.
And you know, any news to report? I know Alzheimer's has always been number one on our list, so it's great to know that you're on the council, and I'm sure you've made sure that stays number one on the hit list.
Yeah, I think, you know, we have a good group, and that is, you know, we know how big of a this disease is detrimental to our state, so we have to be coming together to do more. And one of the recent things that we've done is we've worked on, you know, what we'd like to put into the new state plan on aging for the next 4 years. So, you know, some of the things like dementia training for our APS workers and first responder training, and you know, just more awareness. So we're looking at you know, doing some of those things, but it's definitely one of those high priorities.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And you're working with Lisa O'Neill, who I think the world of.
She's
awesome.
She really is. Yes, we have a great leader.
Yeah, we do.
We sure do.
We definitely do.
Yeah.
So when I left off on the second segment, our first half, I talked about almost 2/3 of Americans living with Alzheimer's are women. And you know, when we're in the caregiving space, and Michelle and I are here to tell you that about 80 to 85% of our workforce is women.
Yeah.
And you know, women have been, you know, really the strength of a lot of families in terms of the care, not only for children but for older adults and for partners. What are we going to do if 2/3 of them have Alzheimer's? I don't think men are really equipped to care for them. I mean, how do we conquer this, and why is it so? I mean, do we have an answer to that?
One thing we have to get more awareness out there, and our last segment we were talking about caregivers, and I think just more awareness about what who those caregivers, who are the faces behind those caregivers. You're not always talking about the elderly wife of a man with dementia or Alzheimer's. You might be talking about a 10-year-old girl. You might be talking about a 19-year-old girl that's putting off college because she's got to take care of her mother who has Alzheimer's. Right. So this is something that kind of spans every generation. And you're right. I mean, women jump in. It's natural to just kind of jump in and be a caregiver and take care of things. And I think that's how we're wired. But we really do need to get more awareness about that. And some of the things that our chapter is really trying to do is especially get more awareness out in the workplace, because we have some really big companies, big employers here, and even though Alzheimer's may not be on the radar, because a lot of people still think it's an old person's disease, we don't really need to worry about that. But when you look at your workforce and you look at the people who are working for you, how many of them are caregivers? And so that's something that we're really trying to get the word out and really, take a look at that and how you can really support those people. And you're right, a lot of them are women.
And one of the data points came out, nearly 20% of the women Alzheimer caregivers have to quit work to be able to care for somebody. And that's not good. It's not good for those employers, and certainly the burden that is placed on these women to help be those caregivers. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, some doom and gloom facts. I mean, they don't, this isn't good news, but again, knowledge is power. And what do we do with this? How do we overcome this?
Yeah, and between segments, we were talking some about how even clinicians aren't necessarily willing to diagnose because they think there's nothing that can be done. And in my work over the years with you guys at the Alzheimer's Association, we've proven that that's not true.
Absolutely.
We may not have a cure, but so much can be done to support the person with dementia and their families and their care partners that the diagnosis is essential, just to validate what somebody's going through, if nothing else.
Well, and certainly for us at the association working with families and caregivers, there's so much planning that needs to occur, and we would much rather plan in advance than be making, immediate decisions and crisis points, right? The last thing we want is to create perpetual cycles of crisis for our families. And so as, kind of referring back to Terri talking about that 1-800 number that we have, it's so critically important that, we're there 24/7 for families to coach them through that journey, to really be there to help, when those decisions come up. But, this was something that the association recognized when it came to our physicians. I mean, the hesitancy to do a diagnosis means there's no planning to be done, right? If you don't know what you're dealing with, you can't plan for what we know will probably come. So we have a new entire field called health systems. We have a health systems director here at the Desert Southwest chapter.
Nice.
And her sole focus is really working with our major health systems, particularly in primary care, to ensure that we're a much more dementia capable system, that our primary care physicians not only know that there are in fact medications that can help treat some of those symptoms, as we know. We've got this new breakthrough with aducanumab where we're not sure exactly how clinically significant it's going to be, but we know that this opens the door to more breakthroughs.
Absolutely.
And so there is going to be more significant treatment options along the way and coming sooner than later. And we need to make sure that our healthcare force is ready for that.
Right. Because when we talk about those causes of death, we've said heart disease is going down, diabetes, strokes are going down. This is the only one that's going up in the top 10. And we need to have our clinicians prepared for this so that when these breakthroughs come around, we can start treating. And I tell families, if you bring a concern to your doctor and the response is, well, it looks like they're probably just normal aging, let's wait 6 months and see, find a different clinician.
Exactly.
Because if you're noticing something that you're willing to bring to your doctor, it's significant.
That's probably one of the hardest kinds of stories that we hear, or when people feel like they've been bounced around and they just have needed answers.
Absolutely. And so I know, Kinsey, you mentioned your helpline. So before we get to the next break, I want to make sure that's the 1-800-272-3900, and 24/7 people can call that number.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because so many of our listeners are listening in right now, and they may think that there's something wrong with their partner or family member, and or they may have gotten a recent diagnosis, and the resources that the Alzheimer's Association Desert Southwest chapter has is amazing, and your social workers are incredible, and I think it's really important to figure out, how do I get help? And that's the first step, is calling that 1-800 number, or going to alz.org/DSW for Desert Southwest. It's interesting as we talk about clinicians. I've had Dr. Pierre Terrio. He's also from the Banner Alzheimer's Institute, and he uses the phrase, the way we handled this in the past is diagnose and adios. And you know what? We have a lot of work to do to really educate our medical provider community about how to diagnose this and not say adios, but give people resources. And it starts with the Desert Southwest chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. Well, you can hear the music. We're down 3. We got one more to go. Stick around. I've got the Desert Southwest chapter from the Alzheimer's Association here. I've got Terri Spitz, who's the executive director. I've got Kinsey McManus, who's the program director. And of course, I've got Michelle Cornelius, our chief operating officer, and our dementia Alzheimer's specialist. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. Got Marshall Tucker taking us out in the 4th segment, so thank you very much, James. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, we've got the Alzheimer's Association Desert Southwest chapter in the studio. I've got Terri Spitz, the executive director. I've got Kinsey McManus. She's the program director. And I've got Michelle Cornelius. She is our chief operating officer at Cypress Home Care. It's our last segment, and we're talking about something that is just so vital for our community, and not just here in Phoenix and Arizona, but across the entire world. This is a disease that we've got to get a handle on. And I don't want to dwell on the numbers and the facts, because they are very scary. But the Alzheimer's Association is doing some wonderful things. And, Michelle gave out the phone number of 1-800-272-3900. That's the number you should call. But also, there's a little green button up on the top right, and it says donate. And, they really value your donations. But, Terri talked about it a little bit in the first segment about where those dollars go. And the dollars go right here. And they go to support those families and to support the community, and also to support the research on, the grants that they're making to Banner Alzheimer's and to other organizations to really help find this cure or a way to delay this onset is so vital to so much in our community and to these families. So I'm really grateful that you guys are here. And I know this segment will go fast, they all do, but I do want to give a big plug, and Terri or Kinsey, you guys can talk about it. We got a big walk coming up, we talked about in the first segment. It is a week from Saturday, November 6th. It's at the Wesley Bolin Plaza Park, which is right there at the Capitol. And if there's any other information you want to give, if my memory serves me correct, we try to get people down there by 7 o'clock because it gets really, really crowded. But the walk actually starts when?
Yeah, so registration is about 8 o'clock, and I will tell you that we are encouraging people to. We have our big Promise Garden ceremony where each flower represents. The yellow is caregiver, orange is advocate. Purple is if you've lost someone, and blue is if you have Alzheimer's. Beautiful to see all of those flowers. But even that, we're going to have a couple of different ceremonies, and we're encouraging people to go ahead and start walking, because we don't want a mob of people walking together just because of COVID, and we want to keep everything safe. But if you want to start a team, or if you want to just go down and you can register when you're at the walk, we have QR codes. We've made it very easy to register, to donate. But I will say, all of these things, the research, the care and support, which Kinsey can tell a little bit about, like some of the work we've been doing.
Be awesome.
It really goes to help people that are on this journey through this disease.
Yeah, so in addition to that 24/7 helpline, we also offer a whole host of education programs. Some are just for the general public to really spread correct information about Alzheimer's and dementia, but the vast majority of our educations are really for families dealing with this disease. How do you cope with those difficult behaviors that come along with Alzheimer's and dementia? How do we improve our communication across the board? I do want to say that with the holidays coming up, we know that this creates additional challenges and struggles. It can be very overwhelming for someone with dementia, with a lot of changes in the day-to-day routine. And even though they're joyous, wonderful times, they can be incredibly stressful times for our families. So please check in on our website, alz.org/DSW, for a listing of our upcoming programs specifically related to managing stress during the holidays and helping support loved ones during the holidays dealing with dementia.
I do want to add, during the holidays, there's also the awareness factor.
Yes.
And we live here in a destination, so many of the children, grandchildren, and family members are traveling here during Thanksgiving and during Christmas, and they get to see their loved ones in maybe at the beginning stages or early stages of this. So, Kinsey, if you're seeing something that just doesn't look right, what should somebody do?
So I do think it's best to start with the primary caregiver. Again, one of the things that we do offer through our social workers at the chapter is to help families start navigating how to have those conversations. They're not easy to have, right, when you're first starting to recognize things. So certainly, and this is the piece, you don't need a diagnosis to call us, right? We often work with families who are either struggling to get that diagnosis because they've been bounced around doctor to doctor, or because maybe some family members aren't able to see that there might be something more significant going on. So really that 1-800 number, 1-800-272-3900, is a great place to start. We can help you navigate some of those challenging conversations within your own family.
What are some of the signs that we should be looking for?
So, there's a lot of things we think is a normal part of aging. And one of the things people often think about is, forgetting where your keys are. That's normal, okay? We all do it. It happens. But when we forget where the keys go, right? We put them in the refrigerator instead of where we hang it on a hook. Those are some of those things you're looking for, that kind of consistent ongoing struggles with remembering what day it is, asking questions over and over again that have been answered. Really that trouble with holding on to information and memory and being able to orient to time and place. Those are some of those things to look for.
This is the time of year when we at Cypress see families call around January after they've been in town, because the home that mom has always kept really super clean is now very cluttered. Mm-hmm. Or they're relying on the non-cook in the family to start making meals, and they see that nutrition is declining. Or they get into the home and look at the medications and realize they're all expired and haven't been refilled, so they're not taking medications.
Yeah. Forgetting those traditional recipes, right?
Right.
Mom always made something special for the holidays and gets confused in the middle of the recipe. So
personal hygiene.
Yes.
Yeah.
Personal hygiene as well.
It's always a good idea to just, as a routine, just check on people, check on your family, check on, your neighbors and everything is just, we've really seen that in the last couple of years, that social isolation. Mm-hmm. And even outside of a COVID year, it's easy to do. A lot of seniors that come here to retire, their kids are all over the nation.
Right.
you know,
Right.
and but just having that regular check-in so you can see when things might be off.
And check in on the caregivers, because we hear people saying, how are you doing? And they tell about the person they're taking care of. And we have to ask a second time, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Because we'll see that too.
So we have about a minute left. What lasting thoughts or advice do you want to leave our listeners as we wind down our show?
Well, even though we've shared a lot of big statistics and kind of scary news, I do believe we have a lot of hope. We have a lot of hope with what we're doing as an association. We have a lot of hope in the research that's coming out. And like you mentioned, what Dr. Ryman said, we are going to see an end to this disease. But until we do, we are here for you.
Nice. And again, Kinsey, can you give us the contact? How do we get a hold of it?
Sure. So the easiest way to reach us is 1-800-272-3900 or on the web at alz.org/DSW for Desert Southwest.
And we've got a memory walk. Can you sign up for that on the website?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. And if you want to, you can just come down too and sign up as well. And that is on November 6th, which is a week from tomorrow. And that is down at the Wesley Bowling Plaza. I suggest you get down there early because it gets really crowded. So if you can get down there in the 7:30 range, registration opens up early, and you can walk in that walk and help donate to a great cause. And that website, there's a donate button too. So please.
We've got them everywhere.
Yeah, we got them everywhere. You've been listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. Terri Spitz, Kinsey McManus from the Desert Southwest chapter, thank you for being here. And Michelle, thank you for helping co-host today.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Make it a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next Friday.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM.